Kobe Bryant. I mean, the name alone says so much, right? A legend of impossible shots, an unbelievable drive, and a life that was just lived at the extremes of triumph and, well, tragedy. But what if we could look at that life not as a series of choices, but as a kind of pre-written code?
It's a pretty wild question, I know, but it's the whole idea behind a really complex analytical framework called geometric structure drive theory. And today, we're going to see what happens when you apply it to one of the most documented lives in modern history. So, yeah, let's just dive in and see what this very unconventional audit says about a legend.
All right, so for the next few minutes, we're just going to walk through this geometric fate audit report on Kobe Bryant, exactly as the source material lays it out. Now, we're not here to say the theory is right or wrong, but just to understand what it claims and see what kind of picture it really paints. To follow along, you really only need to get these 4 core concepts. The theory maps a life using 4 axes. You've got authority, which is all about rules and systems. Then there's impression, which stands for willpower and your ability to learn. Wisdom is your talent and creative action. And finally, wealth, which represents resources and even the physical body itself. So let's rewind the clock, way back to the beginning, August 1978. According to this theory, Kobe Bryant's innate structure, the geometric code he was literally born with, was a blueprint for a life forged in conflict from day one. Now, this slide shows the raw data from his birth, and wow, I know that's a lot to take in, but don't worry about all the numbers. The source material points us to one very specific area, that activity level row, and right there, we find the key to his entire structure, a single, viable path forward in what was an otherwise unstable foundation. And here it is. This was the one and only pass. On that chart we just saw, the activity level for this connection was a 1, while all the others were 0. They were effectively switched off. This path connected his impression, his willpower, directly to his wisdom, his athletic talent. The theory even calculates the force of this connection at 3.93, a number that basically represents his only tool for survival and growth. So the really crucial point is this contrast. You've got his willpower and talent hardwired together, right? But his connection to authority, so societal rules, and wealth, material resources, and even his own physical body, was, according to the source, absolutely locked. The theory claims this pretty much preordained a life of struggle against systems and physical limits. So how did this blueprint actually play out? Well, let's fast forward to 1996. A 17-year-old Kobe enters the NBA, and the theory says that by entering this new, highly structured environment, his geometric code shifted dramatically. It set him up for his first major clash. This number right here is the key. You see, the theory calculates the relationship between these axes as a geometric angle. And back in 1996, the angle of conflict between his talent, his wisdom axis, and the NBA's rules, the authority axis, was a staggering 168.35 degrees, an angle that Extreme has a very specific and kind of ominous name.
It's called destruction mode. Yeah. The theory defines any angle over 150 degrees between 2 axes as a structure that is literally at war with itself. So you think about his legendary rebellious streak, right? That refusal to just fit in. This model frames it not as a choice, but as a predictable geometric clash. His talent was fundamentally fighting the system he had just entered.
And this sets up the central drama of his career, which this theory breaks down into 2 totally distinct phases. First, winning by suppressing his nature to fit the system, and second, achieving individual greatness by unleashing it completely. And this slide just perfectly illustrates his 2 different paths to the top. On the left, you've got the data from his first championship in 2000. On the right, it's from that insane 81-point game in 2006. I mean, even without reading the details, you can just see how completely different the values are. These numbers are telling a story of strategic adaptation. So in 2000, to win that title, his main active path became authority driving wealth. In other words, he played within the rules of the team system to get the material reward, the championship. But what was the cost? His talent, his wisdom axis, got suppressed. His achievement score on that axis was just 46.57, which is a really low value in this system. The source even correlates this directly with the severe ankle injury he had in those finals. It's like he was literally breaking himself to fit the mold. But now, contrast that with 2006. He basically abandoned the system and went right back to his innate path, unleashing his talent to fuel his will. And just look at the results. Both his wisdom and impression scores blew past 100.
which the theory calls top-tier achievement. This was the purest version of Kobe, just an individual force of nature.
And that, of course, brings us to the tragic end of his story. The theory we're exploring here, it doesn't treat this as a random accident. It sees it as the final, unavoidable calculation of his geometric structure.
This is the final data table calculated for that day. According to the theory, it shows his geometric structure under the ultimate environmental pressure, the inescapable physical laws of nature itself.
Remember that destruction mode angle from 1996? On this day, the conflict angle between his wisdom axis, his athletic drive and flight instincts, and the authority axis, the physical laws of weather and gravity, reached a catastrophic 170.70 degrees.
And this chart, well, it puts that final conflict in really stark terms. His athletic drive, his wisdom, was in a superhuman state, registering an achievement score of 117. But the environmental risk from authority, the fog, the physics of the situation, was an overwhelming 144. It was a transcendent force, meeting an absolutely immovable object. The source material concludes with this really chilling, deterministic line. The 17-degree conflict line promptly closed its net. It suggests that the conflict identified at his birth, that fundamental opposition between his drive and the world's rules, had finally and fatally resolved itself. So, what's the big takeaway from this audit? Well, the theory basically says Kobe's entire life was a 41-year battle between his transcendent talent and will, what it calls his high-dimension nerve, and the physical, material limitations of his body. The final tragedy, in this view, wasn't an error or a technical failure. It was the inevitable end of that core conflict. Ultimately, this is just one lens, right? One highly unusual system for trying to find meaning in a life. But it does leave us with a pretty fascinating question to think about. How does the story of a hero, or any of our lives for that matter, change when we see it not as a series of choices, but as the inevitable unfolding of a geometric code,